Hello lovely friends, and welcome to a micro swipe fluid art seahorse today. We've got a little treat for you. Thank you so much to Linda and Jill, my wonderful supporters, and to my subscribers. Your support really helps keep this channel going. So today I've got a seahorse swipe for you. Now I did a seahorse previously with mixed media and adding other things to it and going through stages, but I've got an upcoming workshop in a couple of weeks, and I wanted to try out just using pure fluid art in a really easy way. And I'm going to make this ABC today. I'm using my favourite paints, Pebeo. So there's my iridescent gold, and that one was the iridescent green blue, two of my favourite colours if you're familiar with my channel. And then I've just going to show you on the bottle there where the names tend to be on the Pebeo paints. And then I've got my Dale Rowney violet. Look at that vibrant violet purple. I would just call that purple, but it's a really beautiful colour. Let's call violet on the package. If you get one of these bottles from the range, if you're in the UK, they're £7.99 at the moment. And this is my Pebeo iridescent pink, and these are £4 a tube, and they are brilliant paints. I just go back to them all the time. And what I use to make them flow so nicely is my Liquitex gloss medium, and I tend to put in as much as it feels necessary. I know that sounds terrible to some people, but as in, you know, if you want to have things measured, but that's how I tend to roll. I'll give a bit more detail later. So that was the Amsterdam Oxide Black, and that's the secret where we're going to make cells today in our seahorse. So I'm using my spray just to get these swipe pieces, which are paper towel, all cut up various sizes, to get them nice and damp, but not totally wet, so that they have a bit of heaviness when you're swiping. So here's my base colour, Crawford Black. It's a brilliant acrylic paint. It's really quite reasonable, and again you can get that in the works in the UK, and you still need to water it down, but it's £6 for a litre. Really good. So this is what I'm using today for my base, and it's got beautiful flow to it. This white acrylic paint is very reasonably priced, and I would definitely recommend using it. I use it for my base all the time, and it works really well with every other paint that I use. I've stopped using the paint from the wall paint that people use, because I've tried using it and it does work, but I just find this easier and just as cost effective. So give it a go and let me know what you think. So what I tend to do when I'm starting off my swipe, and this could be any sea creature, but I'm doing a seahorse today, is I use the darkest colour for the outline first. So I'm creating the rough shape of what I think the seahorse would be like, and this is part of the process that I love, that you don't know what's going to happen until you start, and when you start you can then add to it and change it and create it in a slightly different way. One of the things about fluid art that I felt at the beginning was you can't really control the paint, and sometimes it goes in a way that's not how you want, and that's part of the fun of it, but you can also make form out of it. I had a one-to-one session with someone recently, and she painted a beautiful angel in form, and it dried really beautifully. I have to dig it out. She did it on a little tile. So you can create form if you want to, and it can be abstract. So you can see where I'm putting most of the paint. Even though I want the tail to be circular at this point, I just want colour to be on there. And I'm knowing that already the purple will be interacting with the white base, and so you're going to get some shades of lilac. And that's the thing with fluid art, when you put different layering of different colours, you get different effects, and that's why I use really simple colour palettes, because not only is it easy, but it's more, I find it really effective. Oh, I've got a bit of a drip. So that's the lovely thing as well about fluid art. You can just literally flick it off and then put a drop of white paint on there. Sometimes you can even just dab your finger where it is and it will disappear into the colour below. Now later on when this dries, I may well add spray paint or something to it, but you can just leave it as it is and it will be a beautiful painting with this really simple technique. It's the swipe technique, and these are micro swipes. In other words, they're just little swipes. There's another painter, there's another artist called Anna Bount, and I'm going to put the link to her fluid art Seahorse as well, because it was amazing and it's where I was first inspired to do one. Okay, so we've got Pebeo iridescent gold now, and I'm using that as a second layer. I'm putting it very slightly on top of the violet and very slightly to the right, because I'm going to be swiping from the belly where I am now out and from the nose out, and so that all of the canvas to the left is going to be kept white, unless you see little drops of gold and things on it. That's another thing altogether, but sometimes when I have drops, I actually quite enjoy the drops, leave them and create them into something else, and sometimes I want them to disappear, and that's the flexibility that you've got with fluid art. So I'm using now my iridescent green blue as my next layer. As I go along, I'm just really aware of how these colours are going to contrast and work nicely together, and I really want to use the pink because that's, if you look at the colour wheel, it's a little bit, it's complementary to these colours, but it's also slightly in opposition. So in other words, it will give you a contrast in your painting. Sometimes if you have colours that are too similar, there's not enough contrast, and sometimes you don't want as much contrast. You want it to be muted, or you want it just to be those colours. People often say, how come mine was different to yours? Every single painting that you do will be different from the one previously, and it really is about just starting. If you're wanting some materials just to get started, try tiles, try pieces of wood, try stones. You can literally paint on anything and it will stay. So I'm adding my pink now, and I'm putting quite a lot on because I really want that, I keep calling it purple violet, to interact with the pink. And then as I go along, I'm noticing on the right hand side I'll need to add a little bit more white base paint, because when I was tilting, I wanted to make sure I had a thin, this is a really important point, a really thin layer of paint so it's not too thick in any particular area. So you can tilt it until it's nice and thin, but then afterwards, as you're adding these layers, you want the left hand side to remain thin, but you need to add a bit of white so that the paints swipe really smoothly and evenly across, and then any excess paint will be swiped over the edge. So I'm just going to leave you with this for a minute as I enjoy adding the last bit of paint, and I'll be back shortly as I begin to swipe with more hints and tips. This is my first swipe, and I'm using my Amsterdam black, oxide black, with my Australian Floetrol. Look at the effect of the black. For me personally, it's too dark for what I want because I've got enough dark colours in there. So I'm now going to swap that out for the white cell activator, which is Amsterdam again. It's titanium white. And it's titanium white and Australian Floetrol, and I'll show it in a second. So what I'm doing now is, because I want to, it was a bit of a test, that swipe, I'm going over and I'm adding the base paint over that swipe and I'm making sure there's enough base paint from the majority of the paint that I want to keep over to the right hand side. And you'll notice towards the end that you can't really see how dark that bit was if you didn't want it that dark. And you can go over it slightly, and actually it blended really nicely just with that one swipe, and you could do some more if you wanted. So I've got just about enough base paint on there now, to right by the paints, and I'm just going to now put enough by the very edge so that when you're swiping on the edge it has a nice even finish. When you use paper towel or different swipe techniques, if you're swiping right towards the edge and you want the continued pattern down the edge, which I would like today, it's quite important to have enough paint on the edge so it evenly drops off and creates a lovely pattern, continued pattern, which you can also alter, and I do in this video towards the end as well. So there we are, there's my titanium white Amsterdam. The black was also Amsterdam black. So you have a choice of two different cell activators, the black Amsterdam or the white Amsterdam, both mixed with Australian Floetrol. So I'm getting ready my white cell activator, and that's what I'm going to be using for the remainder of the swiping. So just enjoy the swiping as I turn the canvas and move it in a direction that I would like to swipe through. Now you can do this in a static position, but where I'm actually standing, my movement is limited, and that's why I'm using a stand. So you don't need to, if you can walk around your table, you can move to the left and right a bit more easily. Okay, so I'm just going to leave you for a moment, enjoy the music, and I'll come back shortly as I begin to add a bit more detail in the head and the tail, and as I go around the corners.
I'd move the world for your eyes, run through the fires for you. I'd put your love on my life, there's nothing I wouldn't do. I don't feel the same when I'm not with you. Love the risk, but what is this coming to? Oh, your love is dangerous. You make it dangerous. This is dangerous.
So you can see as I start to go around the corners, I'm literally giving it a really wide swipe. So I'm starting at the nose and I'm swiping round the corner and that gives that sort of definition between the head and the body. And later on you can see I use my palette knife to add a little bit more definition by not only swiping slightly into the jaw, but also adding a little bit more white, and I do that in the tail as well. So at the moment I'm literally just swiping to get the general sense of the head. Now I've added 1 drop of Pebeo silicone oil to 2 of my paints, and one of the paints is the violet, and so you're going to get bigger cells and smaller cells, and my hope is that the eye area where I want the eye will have a bigger cell, and so it will be a natural eye. That certainly was my last one, and it doesn't always happen, but you can create one, and you can also bring a cell up or down. I just love the flexibility of fluid art. It's so satisfying, so much fun. So I'm now just using it slightly differently to create a tiny little bit of movement and definition, and I'll come back shortly as I start to work on the tail. You can see I'm going around the corners, and I'm just beginning to literally bring the shape of the tail towards the corners and the sides, and what I'm aiming for is to get that curved feeling from the left hand side down, because once I've got that shape I can then begin to add the detail. I'm going to be adding some white paint, which is the base paint, in the middle, and using a palette knife to add the definition. So I'll be back shortly as I begin to do that. I've got my palette knife. I have put a tiny bit of white on the palette knife, and I'm creating a little bit of definition. You see what I'm doing there? I'm literally just putting some white on my palette knife, and then I'm using that white to swipe through. And for the rest of this video, until I show you the wet results, I'll be adding colour. I'll be adding definition to the seahorse. So just watch really closely and just let me know what you think. Let me know how you could create your own seahorse or your own sea creature. And doesn't it show how this is just taking form? And you don't have to do any of this detail. You could literally just do a curve. You could do the shape of a dolphin. You could do the shape of a fish and do a similar sort of thing. And this is the easiest way that I've found to create a sea creature. And one of the sea creatures that I love the most is the seahorse. So enjoy the process, and as I add colour, and I'll see you shortly.
You're strong and you're brave enough. It's your time. You were made to fly. Never ever giving up. I know it's gonna happen. These dreams, they are all chasing. Don't stop, we got to keep racing. Oh, so
So the finishing touches, I'm adding blobs of paint, tiny little blobs, literally like less than probably half a pea size on the side, and letting it drip down the side. Not only is it really satisfying, but it's also a lovely way to blend really gently the pattern of the seahorse down to the side, and then all I do is I scrape excess paint off and leave it to dry. And I shall show the dry result shortly. So I'm adding a bit of pink here. I don't tend to do it all the way around because actually I'm really like the faint lines and the natural lines that fall, but in some places it feels like it gives that infinity feel to the seahorse. So here's the wet results. Isn't he a beauty? What would you call him? Now what I'm doing now is I'm going to add the detail in the eye, and I'm just using a little bit more violet, and I use a tiny weeny bit of black just to give that definition, to make that eye stand out more, and then a tiny bit of white just for the glint in his eye. I'm going to show you a close-up now of the wet and the dried result, and you'll just be able to see the shimmer and the shine. I've put the seahorse on one of my backgrounds at home to bring out one of the colours, and just shows how a background can make such a difference. So here's the dried result coming up. I'd love to know what you think. I'm going to show you a bit of detail and how the cells have made such an impact on this piece, and of course when it's dry you can always fiddle and add some bits if you like as well. So for me, this one I'm just going to leave as he is. Thank you to Pietro who inspired this colour palette. I hope you enjoy this video, and don't forget that your art is a piece of you. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know if you'd like to challenge me to another sea creature, and if you've got any questions, let me know in the comments below. Let me know what you're creating, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care. Bye.